Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 4 of America's Seed Fund Week. I'm very pleased to welcome you today to share information from across the federal ecosystem. So we're going to be talking beyond America's Seed Fund, and I'm pleased to introduce the Federal Laboratory Consortium for Technology Transfer to talk about how you can connect with the federal laboratory ecosystem. And so here to lead this panel is Paul Zielinski, Executive Director for the Federal Lab Consortium, or FLC. Take it away.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jennifer. And we are really pleased to be with you here today. It's a really particularly special opportunity to talk during America's Seed Fund Week to all the small businesses out there that we really want to try to find as partners, because you are very important to our world. And I hope we can interest you in trying to work with us across the different federal laboratories. So again, my name is Paul Zielinski. I work with this group, the Federal Laboratory Consortium for Technology Transfer, and I'm going to get a little bit into what that is. But I want to also introduce today, we have some fabulous speakers for you today. I have Jenna Dix, who is the Director of Engagement at the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane. And this is a great opportunity. Jenna, of course, is with the Navy, as you can probably tell for that, within the Department of Defense. If we back up, stay in this slide for a sec. There we go. But she can talk a little bit about the opportunities there. I have Dr. Michael Salgaller from the National Institute of Health. He's with the National Cancer Institute specifically, and he leads some efforts in marketing and outreach there. And it's really important, all the different health work that we're going on. And it's certainly one of those things when we talk about technology transfer, it's one of the more relatable areas now during this pandemic. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, we're pleased to have David Kistin, who is with us from the Department of Energy's Sandia National Laboratory, where David works on technology and economic development issues. So wonderful panel for you today. I think what you'll find particularly interesting when you think about defense, health, and energy departments, that really is a huge bulk of the federal research dollar, which is one of the reasons we're really thrilled to have some representatives from each of these really important departments with us today on this panel. So if we can go ahead and move to the next slide, please. So as I said, Federal Laboratory Consortium for Technology Transfer. What is that? Well, so it's actually an interesting organization. It's been around for a long time, as it turns out, but it is actually a consortium across all of the federal laboratories. And we see all sorts of numbers around how many labs there are. We use 300 sometimes because these are the major laboratories. These are big laboratories, big facilities in that 300 number, but there's really thousands of locations across the United States that are involved in technology transfer and that are federal laboratory locations. So from big and small and everything in between, we actually have, like I said, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 laboratories across the United States. And it's very exciting of all the different types of research that they do and the opportunity that is available to you to work with these laboratories. When you think about this huge investment in R&D, I mean, we're really talking right now in the neighborhood of about $170 billion of research that's going on and is appropriated every year to these laboratories. So it's a huge amount of investment in research and really trying to keep the nation competitive. At the end of the day, one of the most important things about working with businesses, and particularly small businesses, is, the government is not your competitor. We don't make stuff. You make stuff. So we are a partner. We really need to work with companies in order to get these great ideas, all of this investment in R&D out into the marketplace. That's where it becomes products and services that people can, buy, distribute, that are actually available to the citizens in the United States to really use. And that's the goal of this research. It's to accomplish a lot of different mission-oriented activities, but it's really to get things out there to make a difference and make a mission difference for the agency itself, as well as economic development. So we want to grow jobs, we want to grow opportunities, we want to make sure that we're successful in terms of our global marketplace. As I said, in terms of the FLC, we're not exactly a new organization. We've been around since 1974. Officially chartered in 1986. There's actually a lovely line from Congress that says this will exist. So we're this quasi-governmental organization that really pulls together the different opportunities available across the labs. And that's one of the exciting things about this panel today, is you'll hear about some of the specific opportunities at a few labs as really great and powerful examples of the different ways that you can work with laboratories and the kinds of opportunities that are available. So if we can move to the next slide, please. So as I said, the goal of technology transfer is really to get these benefits out there to you. We don't do the research at these laboratories just for the sake of doing research. That's not the goal. It's actually to accomplish a purpose. It's kind of an interesting thing when Congress gives money to these laboratories. They actually expect something back. And they really expect something to happen within this mission space. So everybody's directed at trying to accomplish some sort of a goal. But how that goal gets accomplished, again, is a matter of trying to get things that are made and sold. When you think about it, and I sort of alluded to this, when you think about something like this pandemic is a great example. It's one of the more easiest examples to use for technology transfer, because there's a lot of background research that went into these vaccines that folks are getting. But you didn't get a government vaccine. You got something from a company. And that's exactly what we mean by technology transfer. All of this work gets to a company, they make and they produce a product that gets out there that you can use. Again, those vaccines are just an example of vaccines. But for example, the National Institute of Health produces many pharmaceuticals and vaccines that actually have been out there in the marketplace based on the research that goes on in those laboratories. When you think about even something like defense, if you think about a fighter plane, the government didn't make that plane. They bought it. They bought it from a series of companies. There's components that went into that plane that are made by companies and then purchased by the Department of Defense. So it's really a critical part of the mission to actually do this technology transfer piece. Now, in the process, again, we want to work with companies. We want to work with you. So we have unique facilities. We have unique equipment. It's great stuff. And we want to make it so that you can use it. You can come and partner with the federal laboratory. Again, you're helping us accomplish what we want to do, but we're helping you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. We've also got great staff, brilliant scientists and engineers that we work with, all sorts of different fields across the board. Really, in almost anything you can think of, there's someone who's got some expertise. And that's the whole point of this, is that we want to transfer the technology to you. So our success really is your success. If you're making and selling a product, if your company is making money, if you're doing well, we've done our job. We've done a great job because it's actually out there and people can access that technology and use it. So we want to make it available to you. We want to make it available for manufacture, distribution, and sale in the United States. That's our big goal. But we also, in some cases, even want to buy those things. Now, that's not necessarily going to be in the tech transfer side, but that's going to be a different part of those agencies. Now, when we think about SBIR Week and America's Seed Fund, SBIR companies, we can work with SBIR companies. And in fact, you kind of have this natural advantage if you think about it, because there's already an award. The agency has already said that they're interested in working in this area. And that's really a key milestone to get over right off the bat. Is it a joint interest? And of course, if it's an SBIR solicitation that's been out there, it was already recognized as something that government's interested in. So we do want to be able to partner with you, and we can partner with you at Federal Labs even with an SBIR grant, or if there's not, we can do it anyways. There's lots of different tools, and you'll hear about a lot of these things. We can patent and license things. We've got ideas that you can use, and we'll license those out to you. We do cooperative research and development agreements. They're a big workhorse that we use in order to do all sorts of different types of collaborative research. But we also have technical expertise and other different mechanisms. And you'll hear about that a bit as we go through the different agencies, talking about these wonderful and powerful examples of what they do to bring their technologies out into the marketplace. So if we move to the next slide, please. So as I said, we've got some great examples. But when you think about the FLC, we really are covering all federal laboratories across all agencies. And so it's an incredible breadth of work. It covers really almost anything you can think of when you get down to it, because there's usually somebody that has some level of expertise or is doing some sort of research, at least connected. Lots of unique things, but we want to make this work available to you, and we want to be able to work with you. Now, it's difficult sometimes to navigate across the entire federal government. The way our government works, there's not one joint like Ministry of Science and Technology. Each agency does its own work and has its own mission. So one of the things that we can help you do is try to navigate that system and try to find the right place. So with that, what I'd like to do is introduce our first speaker then, Jenna Dix, and she's going to talk about her laboratory. So take it away, Jenna.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. Really excited to be here today to talk to you all. So I'm going to talk through a little bit of the specifics of my laboratory and then how we engage primarily small businesses, since that's the audience here. So as Paul indicated, I am the Director of Engagement for my lab at the Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane Division. And as the Director of Engagement, my role is really focused on outreach and advocacy and building strategic partnerships and doing other types of activities that help to accelerate the delivery of technology to the warfighter. Because as Paul talked about mission and agency mission within the DoD and within the Navy, that's where we're focused. We're focused on that delivery of capability. So that's really where my job is focused on that outreach and advocacy role, trying to find strategic partners to help accelerate our mission, but at the same time, providing value back to our ecosystem partners by providing access to the resources within our laboratory. Next slide, please. So Crane is part of the Naval Research and Development Enterprise. So essentially, this is the R&D arm of the Navy. So as you can see from the slide, we are one of about 20 labs that are really devoted to development and deployment of capability. So just wanted to give you that context a little bit so you can see kind of where we fit into that bigger Navy and DoD R&D enterprise. Next slide, please. So Crane really has a rich history in supporting our nation's warfighter. So as I mentioned, we are focused on delivery of capability and transitioning technology. So we, in many ways, consider ourselves a transition laboratory. So we do S&T work and we do R&D, but our goal is really to get the technology out the door into the hands of the warfighter, and then also, to a lesser extent, but equally important, transferring that into commercial marketplace. So providing opportunities where the technology can be used outside of just our specific DoD purpose. And at Crane, we are national leaders in 3 primary mission areas. So we are really focused on 3 big things, encompasses a lot of different technologies within those, but those are strategic deterrence, electromagnetic warfare, and then expeditionary warfare. So what does that mean, right? So strategic deterrence capabilities are really focused on technologies that are involved in the nuclear triad, right? The 3 legs of the nuclear triad, how we protect our nation from our adversaries. And so we work really heavily in the area of microelectronics when it comes to trusted microelectronics, radiation hardening, things like that, as well as hypersonics programs. So within the DoD, we really lead the efforts related to microelectronics, and we also have a presence of the Joint Hypersonics Transition Office actually located at our laboratory. And so one of our other mission areas is this electromagnetic spectrum operations. And so really this encompasses the sea, air, ground capabilities anywhere in that kind of EW domain, radar, 5G, things like that. And then lastly is our expeditionary capabilities and our special warfare department. And so that's really these guys that are the boots on the ground, right? And so our technologies are enabling them to sense, detect, and engage. And we have many unique capabilities in that area as well. Next slide, please. So Crane's mission sets are really critically important to the national defense. And so at Crane, we really recognize that the tough challenges that face our nation are best solved through strategic collaborative partnerships with our peers within the ecosystem, whether it be industry, academia, small businesses, other government entities. We know that in order to best deliver capability and to protect our nation, we have to be willing to partner. And so we really place a high value on this concept of partnerships, and we're very intentional about creating strategic partnerships that are mutually beneficial and really ultimately strengthen both our economy and our national defense at the same time. Next slide, please. So then, as many of you probably know or have heard this week or will definitely hear as we talk today, technology transfer is really a key enabler to these strategic partnerships. So this slide kind of gives you an idea of the volume of technology transfer that we do at my lab. So we have about 3,000 scientists and engineers and over 100 of these cooperative research and development agreements that Paul mentioned. And so those types of agreements are what really enable our scientists and engineers to work with small businesses and entrepreneurs to either advance technology or R&D initiatives to support moving technology from the lab into the marketplace, or to otherwise just share and exchange the resources that we have available at the lab, whether it be our people, our testing equipment and those types of capabilities, or intellectual property. So all of these things are accessible through different types of agreements. And then on the subject of intellectual property, we have a really robust intellectual property program at my lab. So we're sitting at probably, I don't know, maybe 400 or so active patents. And I mentioned before that we are a transition laboratory, right? So we are trying to transition technology to the warfighter. And so that means that a lot of our IP is fully developed. It's developed and fielded. So they're technologies that are ready to go, that have kind of bridged that valley of death, so to speak, already, and have the opportunity to be taken to market. We also have other technologies, though, that do need some more work. And with the SBIR focus that we have this week, we have a lot of partners that we work with through CRADAs and licensing who are actively pursuing and working on different SBIR initiatives. So they might be incorporating some of our intellectual property into the technology that they're developing and pursuing, or they might be working with us under a cooperative research and development agreement to allow us to support them as they work through their SBIR project. So definitely a lot of tie here between the America's Seed Fund and our ability to engage on the technology transfer side. And then just one more piece about the technology licensing. So one thing that we've found at our lab, we've got about, the number here I think might be a little off. I think we're probably closer to 25 or 30 licenses at this point in time. 95% of those are to small business. So that's something that we're really proud of, because we certainly work a lot with the larger defense industrial base, but we always are looking for more small businesses to work with. And so whenever we're able to offer licenses to small businesses, we always feel like that's a win. And we also do a time-limited royalty-free license for technologies in our portfolio. And that really allows folks to come in and kind of test drive the technology before making any type of financial or otherwise commitment to the government. So you spend a year exploring the tech, see if it works within your business portfolio. If it does, then that's great, right? And we will pursue a more traditional license. And if not, you just give us a report about what you found, and hopefully we can build our relationship in other ways. So really making a lot of effort at trying to provide accessible opportunities for our lab, and kind of reducing that or removing that barrier to entry, so to speak. And we've had a lot of success with that over the last few years. And so that's something that, an offering that we're excited to have and to provide to small businesses in particular. Next slide, please. Just a couple other things I wanted to mention. Another engagement initiative where we are heavily engaged in looking for small business partners is through our Midwest Tech Bridge. And so the Tech Bridge is really focused on being a connector between our ecosystem and our lab. They're working to bridge that gap between small business, industry, entrepreneurs, and our lab. What are those needs? I think I hear my counterpart working in the Tech Bridge area talk a lot about connecting problem owners to solution providers, right? And whether that problem owner be the government with the small business base being the solution provider, or vice versa, right? But really trying to connect folks. And within the Navy, there are these tech bridges kind of spread out throughout the nation, but we have one here in the Midwest located near my lab. And we're really just focused on providing opportunities for small businesses to come in, talk to us about the technologies that you have, that you're pursuing, or what your needs are, and finding ways that we can help and partner in that way. So if you want to follow the Midwest Tech Bridge or see if there might be something there for you, that would be helpful. You can certainly look us up on LinkedIn or reach out, and we'd be happy to connect with you on that. And then my last slide is contact information. So I have a lot of information here on how to get in touch with different folks who work on these various programs at my lab. If anything that I've said kind of resonates, or the tech areas that I hit on piqued your interest, please feel free to reach out. We're always looking for new small business partners, and we'd be happy to engage. So at this point, I'll go ahead and hand it over to our friends from the National Cancer Institute to hear more about their laboratory.
So thank you, I appreciate it very much. So NIH, we're the world's largest basic biomedical research center. We're also the world's largest funder of academic research around the world. However, there's also a very strong commercial component that we have that isn't as well known. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about that. So if I could have the next slide, please. So this is our campus in Bethesda, Maryland. We have a few different campuses around the country. And actually most of my remarks are going to be on sort of the business case. I'm going to touch upon some of our capabilities, but since the audience today is in the for-profit world, that's pretty much what I'm going to address. So like the other agencies, we're funded with public tax dollars, and we use that going from left to right to create new intellectual property. That property can then be used to attract new R&D resources. And we are, part of our mission is to obtain a return on the public dollar. And that comes in two general categories. One of those is benefiting public health, basically improving the quantity and quality of people's lives. An important part of our mission statement, though it isn't as well known in the healthcare community, is stimulating economic development. So as some of our colleagues on the panel have already alluded to, we are to work with you in order for you to get important medical solutions to market and hopefully grow your company, hire more people, lease more space, pay more taxes, all that kind of good stuff. Next slide, please. So there's 6 potential business opportunities to work with us. On our campuses, we do come up with intellectual property. Some of it is developed just solely by us and other with industry partners. And so those technologies are available for our industry partners to in-license. And then similar to the other federal labs, we also have technology development collaborations with our internal or intramural research program. Given that we're very well known for the funding that we provide around the world, it's important to differentiate what my office is involved with from the external funding mechanisms. So the external funding mechanisms that we have, the hundreds of grants that we offer every year, is part of the external or extramural research program. My particular office on the campus that you see here is dedicated to the internal or intramural program. We have our own 18,000 people. We have several hundred tenured investigators, and they are looking for partners and licensors. We also, as I mentioned, offer grants. We also offer contracts. So we have a lot of contract mechanisms to provide goods and services to help us with various capabilities. NIH is your partner. It can also be your customer. So every year we do procure a large number of products and goods and services. Some of the services that we have as core facilities within the NIH can be leveraged by our industry partners. And, when companies reach out that are interested in what we have to offer, I can certainly drill down more on that at that time. And then we have a vast electronic library that can assist companies. Some of those are on technical aspects, different areas of science, biology, chemistry, etc. And others are more the business type databases that we can make available to help you put a more rounded, complete story around your technology when you're looking for, let's say, equity financing. Next slide, please. So I started at NIH about 20 years ago in research at the second floor of the building that you see, and then had a varied career on the external side for a while, helping people start companies, being an investor, and that sort of thing. And after coming back after 20 years, there were certain misconceptions about the National Institutes of Health on the industry side that we always want to directly address. While we are the largest basic biomedical research center in the world, we also do translational and clinical work. So we do studies that are at all stages of the product development continuum. We do a lot of basic understanding in basic biology and chemistry, but we don't just work on what generically could be called drugs, therapeutics, etc. We also do a lot of work with devices, diagnostics, med tech, e-health, etc. And so we have a lot of companies in the some of the most exciting spaces, such as combination products, machine learning, artificial intelligence, wearables, things like that, come to us to help work with them to bring their products to market and to the patients who really need them. We don't just work with academia. Every year, we nurture, develop, and continue hundreds of industry licenses and partnerships. As far as we're concerned, you do not have to be located in the US to work with us. And you also do not have to have the US as your only go-to-market strategy. Now, in healthcare, for many diseases and disorders, significant global impact, the US is the 800-pound gorilla, so to speak, when it comes to market. But we hear from companies that are interested in going to market in the European Union because it's felt in some aspects of technology they have a more streamlined path to market. That's fine with us. So you can be located anywhere in the world. You do not have to have a toehold in the US to potentially work with us. And you can bring your ideas to them and we can co-develop them together. You do not have to be your ideas do not have to come from NIH. We can look at what you're working on and figure out a way that we can work together. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide. I have a couple sort of take-home messages that I call drop the mic moments. The QR code here will take you to a number of our value proposition statements. So one is that, again, while we're thought of an academic center, we're very good at getting products to market. If you actually added up the US sales from products either licensed directly from us or co-developed with us last year, would come to actually over $7 billion US. Importantly, compared with other academic centers, universities, and research institutes, we take no equity. And for those of you in the small business format that equity is a concern of yours, you're always concerned about how much of your company you have to give up in exchange for getting that technology licensed into your company. And so we take no equity. We also have no overhead or indirect costs. And again, in the healthcare space, it's very common for there to be significant overhead charges to work with a certain prominent research university or institute. And so we have no overhead or indirect costs to work with us. Because we're funded by the federal government, we have what I call a different business model. We can look at you as a partner rather than revenue source. We're not dependent upon you to fund our operations. So therefore, a lot of our business and financial terms, I can say are fairly company friendly. The technologies that you bring to us, you can validate your technology either preclinically or clinically. We have, of course, very well regarded and world-renowned researchers and resources that you can leverage. And we're a very well-known entity. So, we're not often thought of as a brand, but we are a very well-known brand, so to speak, and we can help you increase your profile by having us work together. So there's a couple questions in the chat that I'm going to wait till everybody's done and hand it off to the next speaker. And thank you for your time.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm David Kistin. I'm with Sandia National Laboratories. Sandia is a multi-mission laboratory that's managed and operated by a group called NTES for the U.S. Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. So we are an FFRDC, federally funded research and development center. We work with other government agencies, industry, and academic institutions to accomplish our missions in several areas. Our primary focus is on nuclear weapons, national security programs, energy, and global security. So we are based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Livermore, California, with smaller sites around the country, but we partner with businesses and universities all across the US. So today, I want to talk about some of the programs that are unique to our operating environment. And while we are operated on behalf of the Department of Energy, we have some different constraints, but some different opportunities also when it comes to working with small businesses. So we have a few things I'm going to talk about today that we run that are synergistic to the SBIR program. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are in a nutshell kind of broken into a few categories. So we provide technical assistance to companies. We operate some physical spaces that are available to our partners. And we also have some program-specific engagement with the broader business ecosystem that I'll touch on today. So the first program that I'll mention is one of our technical assistance programs. And on the next slide, you can see, so this is called Nmsba, and essentially this is funded through a tax credit exchange with the state of New Mexico. Next slide, please. So this is a program that we've been running since 2000. We've worked with over 3,000 businesses. We track the economic impact of the work that we do here. And it's really interesting. So essentially the way that this works is companies can apply for help overcoming, whatever the challenge might be. And it's $20,000 to $40,000 in time that's spent at the labs. I want to note here, a lot of the DOE labs offer technical assistance programs. This is a great resource. So again, this is non-dilutive. Funding does not go directly to the companies that are applying. This is really just a way to increase partnerships. It's a good way, all of these technical assistance programs, a good way to get to know the PIs that are inside the labs, to understand the capabilities that the federal government has invested in. And this is what we consider kind of a gateway to larger partnerships like CRADAs and licenses. On the next slide, talk about something called Trigger, so the Technology Readiness Initiative. So something that we noticed was with all the companies that were coming and working with us through these tech assistances, there was a gap. And essentially, there was a need for tech maturation. So companies that graduate into a CRADA or a license partnership are eligible to receive up to $150,000 in technical assistance, which just for context is roughly, you get support from a PI at the labs for 12 months, and they are dedicated to helping work on this program. So this is really about getting your technology ready for market. We work with a lot of businesses that have taken on hardware challenges and are very close to commercialization, but need to increase the technology readiness level of their work. And so that's what this program is designed for. 150 probably sounds familiar to a lot of you in the SBIR space. This is, around a phase 1 award. And the difference is that this is entirely dedicated to the lab and the technical assistance. So our hope is that for companies, instead of having to take their award and sub a large portion of it to the labs or to others to help and bring some of these unique capabilities to bear, that funding can stay with the company. We can provide access to these unique resources. And so this is something that's relatively new. Again, this is in partnership with the state of New Mexico, but we hope to see this expand to other sites and to other laboratories within the DOE network. On the next slide, I just want to talk about something that has also been really interesting, and so sort of synergistic here. We provide a program, and a lot of the labs and a lot of the DOE sites have something similar. And it's called Entrepreneurial Separation. So this is a tool, it's a policy that allows employees to leave the labs and join startups or existing companies with guaranteed reinstatement for up to 2 years. So why is this relevant for SBIR? We have a number of examples where PIs who have helped and worked and done technical assistance have joined companies to really help them accelerate their development, right, and the technology maturation. And sometimes the PIs and the researchers stay out and they stay with the companies, but sometimes they're really there just to help ramp up and scale. And then after their time with those companies, will return back to the labs and come back into their positions. So we see a lot of this in the last year. I think we have 12 people who are out on entrepreneur separation, which seems like a small number, but it's pretty significant. And so this is an exciting thing that we're able to do with the Department of Energy. On the next slide, just talk briefly about the Science and Technology Park. So we manage a research park just outside of our main campus in Albuquerque. And this is a master planned community and really designed to increase connections between the Department of Energy, Sandia Labs, the Department of Defense, and the Air Force Research Laboratory, which all coexist on the Kirtland Air Force Base. And just connect companies to procurement opportunities, to collaborative research opportunities, and to that assistance that I mentioned before. And there's a huge spectrum. So we have small 1-2 person companies that will get small, office space here just to be able to really ramp up what they're doing. We also have large, security and defense contractors like Blue Halo, who are based here because they have significant engagement with DOE and DoD, and so it's everything in between. This is a great place where you sort of have this community of practice of people that are part of the national security enterprise, who can come together and co-locate. Next, we have something called the Center for Collaboration and Commercialization, and this is where I am sitting right now. One of the things that we have found has been really, I think, difficult, right, or a challenge for small businesses working with the federal government and with the laboratories has been just access and understanding, what it means to partner. A lot of the work that we do traditionally has been behind gates. Literally in Sandia's case, we are on an Air Force base and you have to go through a lot of security to get there. And so a few years ago, we developed a space where people can just walk in, learn about partnerships, learn how to work with the labs and with the Department of Energy. And in COVID, obviously, the physical space has been less of a priority, but the message and the spirit are still the same, where the advice that we give to companies and to academic partners and to anyone who's interested in working with us is just to reach out early and often, consider the partnerships groups at, all of our agencies and labs as a front door to all of these great, unique resources, and just reach out and just ask. There's no real expectation that companies have a full understanding of the mechanisms to partner or the capabilities or, what this means when they approach us for the first time. That's why we are here. We're here to help just provide more insight into that. And so lastly, I just want to give a quick example of something that we're doing on specific technology. So we are part of a group called the Quantum Systems Accelerator. This is a DOE-funded center that we operate with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And there's this big focus, and so really just to use this as an example for, I think, a growing trend in government. So this is a large center that has been set up with some really specific technical milestones. But as part of those technical milestones, there is a really high priority and focus on industry partnerships, workforce development, and general ecosystem activity. And so we're starting to see this across not just the labs and the agencies themselves, but specific technology verticals where we've really been tasked and sort of challenged to make sure that we are incorporating end users in all of our work. And so quantum, as an example, is a very early stage technology space, but we're already thinking about all the potential use cases and tech transfer pathways that might emerge over the next 10 years. And so again, I think my drop the mic ending statement here to steal from NIH is just reach out as much as you can early, often, and just let us know how we can help. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much to all of the panelists that we have. And we had some great questions that have come in. I know I've tried to type a little bit, but I think we're going to revisit some of those just to make sure that we're covering them, because I don't know that everyone's had a chance to offer some opinions on this. But I think there's a couple that are really particularly interesting. I'm going to start right off with the first one, if I could, for all of the panelists here. To whom is the technology being transferred? From whom? Well, to whom is the technology being transferred and from whom? And where does a small business having their own IP fit in? So if any of you would like to take that one on.
I'll chime in. I feel like in DoD, we're a lot different. I feel like what I am about to say and probably what Mike or David says might be, sound different, right? So because we are a defense lab, and I mentioned our focus is delivering technology to the warfighter. Like we have that very specific mission for technology development and delivery internal to the organization and internal to the agency. And so I think I saw another question down in the chat too about the warfare centers and only being interested in bringing and pushing tech out and not bringing tech in. And I think I challenge that because, we're looking at everything, right? Like, so we're always interested in the technology that you have to bring to us that can enhance the capability that we're providing. But we also know that when we develop technology, we don't want to develop technology solely for the warfighting purpose that we need it for, right? Like we want technology that is going to be useful outside of our application as well. And so in that case, that's where we really get into this dual use idea, right? So the idea that a technology that is developed for a DoD use also has a use in the commercial marketplace. And that's what we're looking for. So we definitely at my lab have this focus of this internal either bringing tech into the lab and getting it into the hands of our users. But at the same time, we have a lot of technology to offer that's really valuable on the commercial side. It's just less of a focus for us than I think it probably is for NIH. And that's just my thought on that.
So picking back on those great remarks, it's important to note that when companies bring technology to us, when they bring intellectual property to us, that it will stay theirs. And I'll speak for HHS. I don't have the knowledge base for the other agencies, but there's, at least in the healthcare space, there's sort of this boogeyman about reach-in rights. And what I say about that is that's all it is. We didn't exercise it during the global pandemic known as COVID. And if we didn't do it then, we're not going to do it now. So if you bring in intellectual property, it stays yours, period, full stop. If we develop something new together, while it is jointly owned, your company would basically be able to negotiate rights for exclusivity for that technology. And again, for which, for example, we do not take equity and other financial advantages.
Yeah, and I will just kind of cap that. So I think, very similar to Jenna's comment, all of our work is done at the request of sponsors, right? So we are doing a lot of research and development work because there was a specific government need for what we're doing. So, our primary mission drives a lot of the innovation that's happening. However, in the course of that innovation, we see a lot of dual use, and we bring technologies in. We also, make those technologies available to the private sector. Not everything is available. A lot of the work that we do stays within government use just because of the nature of the application space. But whenever possible, we do have that available and out there for the private sector.
I just want to throw in one other thing on this one, just from my own perspective, which is, when you think about, so the question about what if you have your own IP coming to the laboratory, and I know we've talked a bit about it, but when we talk about tech transfer from a federal lab, we do patents and licensing. However, if you look at the majority of what we end up doing, it's actually joint research projects. So it's partnering agreements. So if you have intellectual property that the lab is interested in, again, as several of the folks said, there's a lot of interest in this mission accomplishment, not necessarily just pushing what we want to get, what the lab is doing. So it's actually advancing towards a purpose. So if it's something that comes in that's in sync with the lab's mission, that's great. And as I said, we do way more partnering agreements with federal laboratories than we do strictly just licensing out agreements. So it's just something to keep in mind in this space.
Yeah, and Paul, to that point, the DoD has had, different studies conducted, academic studies on economic impact, looking at both technology licenses and then the cooperative research and development agreements, right? And the economic impact from those CRADAs is orders of magnitude more than the economic impact of the licensing, right? And that's because our people are actively helping these industry partners and small businesses create products that can then be used and sold, right? So the value of those collaborative research and development agreements just can't really go understated.
And I think it's important too to note that while we're talking about the different agencies with our agency representatives here, the FLC collectively can help you find what it is you're looking for across all agency areas. So if what you are trying to get into, what type of agreement you're trying to make, what type of relationship you're trying to build is not necessarily a fit for Jenna at Crane, it might be a fit for somebody else at a different location. You can always ask us collectively, and we're a free and open to the public resource. So we're here for you across the board to help kind of walk you through what types of options you have. And we connect you in 3 different ways mainly. Those are to help you find partnerships like we've discussed, to help you find licenses like we've discussed. And then also there's a facilities and equipment piece that we haven't touched on too much. I just want to make sure that you're available or you're aware that is available to you, where if there's a large facility for furthering your research, furthering your own technology at your business, we can help you put you in touch with the right people so that you can utilize that resource as well. So.
Very good. So let's see, we have a couple different questions around this, but just quickly, if you all could share a little bit of your perspective on whether or not, and since particularly this is an SBIR related conference, does it, in terms of your technology transfer program and your agency's SBIR programs, how do those work together?
So for us, what we find is that most of our engagement is through CRADAs. Honestly, and we typically, are submitting topics and topic sponsors and that type of thing on different SBIR projects. But when it comes down to it, most of our engagement is really directly with the small businesses. Maybe they need to come in and utilize a testing capability, a unique testing capability that we have, right, in order to achieve their goal for their project. Or maybe they just need the technical consultation. In that case, that's something that, we do quite frequently. And we have a fair number of CRADAs with companies that are working on different SBIR projects. And that's really from my perspective in the Navy lab, how we're engaging with companies directly through SBIR.
Any
So-
other? Jump in?
So, we're working towards establishing, stronger ties. You could say cross pollination, cross marketing with the SBIR program, because certainly they could be a very good, I guess you could call, feeder system for later relationships with us. Now we do and can partner with and license to companies that are still receiving and still eligible for SBIRs. What we're trying to get the word out, and why we appreciate the time today, is that there's great awareness of the SBIR program within HHS. It is the other offerings of HHS through tech transfer and other opportunities that that we would like to create awareness of. So for our agency, we're trying to work with them to sort of more cross-pollinate that message.
Yeah, I'll say, so at Sandia, it's a little unique. So we provide input on topic areas. We also work as a sub-awardee. And in our region, there's a lot of companies that will go after DOE and DoD in particular, where we can be helpful. We are an engineering lab, and so that's a role that we play pretty often, and we do that through what we call work for others, or strategic partnerships. We also guide a lot of the companies that we work with into our regional FAST program, which has been excellent in just getting people prepared. So for all of our partners, trying to cross-pollinate and make sure people are aware of all the resources that are out there.
And I thank you for bringing that up, David, actually, because it's interesting. One of the questions was whether it's better to go through FAST or work with the federal lab. Personally, I think it's kind of all of the above, because I mean, we all actually do talk to each other and work together. So I think in that regard, it worked. Particularly, I think, David, maybe you could talk a little bit about that from your lab, since you just brought it up a little bit more.
Yeah, so the FAST program is this amazing resource for companies where you can reach out and essentially get guidance on how to put together your proposal, how to identify the resources that you need. And yeah, this is huge. I mean, this has been a determining factor for a lot of our partners in getting this award, especially if you're new to the SBIR program. Just having someone who's there to walk you through every step is really important, and understand, just eligibility, how to get all your paperwork together, how to get all your registration in place, which can be a lot, right? Especially if you are a startup or a very small company, so on the spectrum of what constitutes small business. And so it's great. And yeah, we see it as completely synergistic. There's no reason not to. This doesn't cost you anything. These are funded programs, aside from time. So yeah, definitely it's an all of the above.
Fantastic. There was several questions regarding very specific technology areas, and I've put in the chat or in the Q&A a couple different times. We actually offer a resource called FLC Business, and it's available. We're at federallabs.org, where you can even just, put that into Google and it'll come up. And it's actually a great way to search across all of the laboratory technologies. And there's a great piece in there on facilities and equipment. So for test facilities, or just different pieces of equipment that are out there, it's actually a pretty good database and resource for that as well. And then Corin's on here, and she's also very willing to help you find the right place. If you just even send it into the info@federallabs.org, we can try to help direct you to maybe somebody that could be the right match for your company. So I know we're almost out of time. And so what I'd like to just sort of do is just open it up to the panelists here. If there's anything that you wanted to say in closing before we welcome in the intellectual property panel.
So I would say that everything you heard today is part of our mission statement. It's our core responsibilities. It's our core focus, and something we enjoy getting up and doing every day. So we look forward to hearing from you and learning about your exciting innovations.
Fantastic. Any other, Jenna, David? Any parting?
No, I'd say again, just, if you have any questions about how to work with the labs, work with, these agencies, FLC is a really good place to start. And, this is a great connector and a way to, I think, get a lot of information in one place without having to go around to, 17 different offices. So good place to start. Copy Corin's email and again, just reach out early and often.
Yeah, and I was just going to say something similar and reiterate something Paul mentioned in the very beginning, and that's that federal labs touch all technology areas, right? So if you're working on a technology, there's at least one, if not multiple, federal labs working on similar technologies, right? Finding them can be hard, and that's where the FLC comes in. So again, just to echo the FLC business, reach out to Corin. All of the federal labs have folks like us that are looking for partners and ready to work with you.
So with that, I think we're right about at time. And so I'm going to welcome back in Jennifer to bring in the next panel that we've got within this block. Great. Thank you to all of our panelists on this panel. It was really great to have you here. Thank you so much for your time. Reach out to any of these folks directly if you would. All of our information will be on the website. And so that will be available to you. And I want to thank you for your attendance and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
Thanks so much, Paul, Jenna, David, and Michael, and Corin. Please, everyone in the audience, stick around. We've got a really exciting panel coming up for you in just a few minutes. Hello. So we just heard about some fantastic resources available from the federal laboratories, including intellectual property being developed by the scientists and engineers working for federal agencies. And now we'll be turning toward other resources for innovators beyond just funding. And that's, how do you protect your creativity and innovation? How will you protect your own intellectual property? So I'm excited to hear and would welcome all of our panelists and experts here today from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office and U.S. Copyright Office. Really, today's session is just a light sampler of the breadth of possible topics on intellectual property so that you can get a sense of how to follow up more deeply on what's really relevant for you. And so it's my pleasure to introduce you to today from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Zandra Smith, Supervisory Patent Examiner, Jason Lott, Attorney Advisor with Trademarks Customer Outreach, from the U.S. Copyright Office, Miriam Deschamps, Associate Registrar of Copyrights and Director of Public Information and Education, and Jalen Johnson, Attorney Advisor for the Office of Public Information and Outreach. So we're going to get started with a crash course in intellectual property, getting started just with Zandra Smith to talk about patents, and then we'll hear more about trademarks and then copyright. So over to you, Zandra. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, for introducing me, and thank you, everyone, for having me here today. So I'm going to talk really quickly about patents specifically. As far as the intellectual property, you're going to hear information about the other forms of intellectual property from the Jason, Jalen, and Miriam. Next slide, Jason. So this is what I like to call our intellectual property cheat sheet. It's basically, what it basically does is give you an overview of and examples of the different forms of intellectual property. It gives you the time frames, and I just like to include this in all of our presentations because it's kind of a concise one-stop stop for and then an explanation of intellectual property. I'm going to talk specifically about patents and say a couple things about trade secrets, but that's about it. Okay, next slide. So basically a trade secret. The only reason I'm talking about trade secrets is because trade secrets are secrets. So the federal protections that you would get if you filed a patent, a trademark, a copyright, these aren't things that are afforded to you for a trade secret. Trade secrets are what comes from the word. They are a secret. And as long as you, as the owner of the trade secret, do steps to ensure that you protect your intellectual property or your secret, then you're fine. There's a Defense of Trade Secrets Act in 2016 that kind of works to help protect a trade secret, but essentially it is on the owner of the secret to make sure they follow steps necessary to protect a trade secret. Next slide, please. So again, why are they useful? They're useful for things like KFC and Coca-Cola, their formulation, Google's search analytics, and maybe, contact lists. So they are, they protect them. And because it's a secret, if you follow the necessary steps to make sure they are a secret, then they are always a secret. So you never have to worry about timeframes of protection that's afforded to you as for a patent, which is 20 years from filing. Now there are some ways to lose your trade secret, and it's basically you didn't do, as the owner of the trade secret, didn't follow the steps to ensure that someone in your company didn't steal parts of it and publish it. Reverse engineering is always a problem with trade secrets, but there's nothing really we could do about that. Okay, so now I'm going to start talking to you about patents. I just wanted to let everybody know what a trade secret was so we could get started with that. So now I'm going to talk to you about patents. What is a patent? Why would you want to get a patent? Very quickly, it is a right to exclude others from making, using, selling, or offering to sell, importing your invention for a limited amount of time. That's what a patent is. It's a limited amount of time. The note here is that there is no worldwide patent. We do have agreements patents has, we have agreements with other countries to kind of ease the process of filing in another country, but we do not have a worldwide patent. So if you want coverage in Germany, you have to file in Germany. If you want any other state, country, you do have to file there. Okay. So now this government grants a property right in exchange for disclosure. We want you to disclose your invention. We want you to disclose your invention for a number of things, because you disclose something, you are going to spur the imagination of someone else. And that is the purpose for publishing the patents. There are other purposes, but your invention can spur another person's imagination, which can only then make things better. Next slide, please. So the role is going to be to protect your invention. Limited amount of time, you disclose to us what it is, and for a limited amount of time, it is protected. Encourage innovations, which is what I just said. Promotes commercialization and accelerates the commercializations. Now think about it this way: when you are filing your patent, and you have a patent, you have a commercially viable invention, right? You can use your patent in a number of systems, in a number of ways, because it is property. So you can sell it, you can lease it, you can do whatever you want. It is literally your property. You can use your property to promote commercialization, accelerate commercialization in a particular set. Next slide, please. I think I have one more slide. Okay. Now, again, as I said, you can use your patent to gain entry into a particular market. You can use it to attract investors, because again, if it's a commercially viable invention, you'll be able to use that to attract investors. It is a marketing tool to attract investors. Infringement, now you filing your patent with us. This is not a trade secret. This is not a secret, because we do publish at 18 months after filing, but you can use this to be asserted against an infringer. It is collateral, because again, commercial success or potential for commercial success can be used as collateral, and it's going to create revenue. So again, patents are a form of property. There are different types of patents. You can file, there's a design, which is what it looks like. There is, in the actual utility patent set, there's the provisional patent application, which has some different rules than the non-provisional patent application. That it's a little complicated, so we didn't go into this, but if there's one more slide, Jason, can you give me the last slide? If that's it? Okay, that was the last slide. So just a note to say, a patent, again, it is your property, and it can be used the way you would want your property to be used. And as long as you do the steps, as far as the trade secrets go, to protect it, and you file with us, then the patent is used to assert against an infringer. So it'll just help to take care of your invention. So what I'm going to do is Jason's going to talk to you a little bit about trademarks. So Jason.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sandra. Hey there, everybody. I'm Jason Lott, the attorney advisor for Trademarks Customer Outreach at the USPTO. And it is my job to teach you about trademarks, what they are, why they're important, and how the federal registration of your trademark can help you build your business. So this is what today is going to kind of look like. I'm really only going to talk about the first two bullets there, trademark fundamentals and why you might want to register with us. But I'm also including in there some resources. We're going to talk about resources later on today, but I want you to have some stuff in writing for sure that you can click on links and things like that. So let's dive in and talk about what a trademark actually is and why it might matter to you as an inventor or to someone who is starting up a small business. Well, as you can see on your screen, these are some pretty well-known trademarks, right? You've seen these before. Maybe you haven't seen them in black and white before, but I can tell you this is how they registered their trademarks with us. We'll talk about why that is in just a couple of minutes. But the reason I want you to take a look at these images is because they do a great job of helping reinforce what a trademark is. So if you look up in the top left-hand corner there and you see the Apple logo, when you see that logo, what do you think of? computers, right? Or maybe mobile phones or earbuds or watches or whatever. When you see Coca-Cola, what do you think of? Soft drinks. McDonald's, hamburgers. Amazon, online marketplace. Samsung, consumer electronics. Microsoft, software. Google, search engines. Nike, shoes. Ford, trucks, right? So every single time you see or hear or experience a trademark, it automatically calls to mind a very specific set of goods and services in your mind. And that is what a trademark is. And what it does. It identifies the source of goods and services. And in addition to that, it distinguishes them from the goods and services of another party. Right? So the function of a trademark is really legal protection for your brand. So let's say that you've invented this brand new thing and you have a patent on it, right? And so you want to be able to market this, and you want people to be able to find you in the marketplace and say, oh, you know what I need? I need a whatever, right? I need a blank brand, whatever. Well, the trademark is what's going to give you that legal protection so you can protect that brand name of this new thing that you've invented or this new service, perhaps, that you're providing. But I think it's important that we also talk about what a trademark is not, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there about what a trademark is. A trademark does not mean that you legally own a word or a phrase. It does not mean that you can stop other people from using a word or a phrase. And it does not mean that people owe you money if they use a word or a phrase. I've heard that one before. Well, if someone uses my trademark, that means they owe me a nickel, right? No, that is not what that means. All right. So think about a common trademark that we've already talked about. Think about Apple. Now, the word Apple is a common everyday word. Just because Apple has a registered trademark for the word Apple, that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to use the word Apple. I can talk about Apple. I can talk about an Apple phone. I could go down to the kitchen, open up the fridge, pull out an apple, polish it up, and eat an apple. I could say apple, 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 right? I don't know Apple money every single time I say the word Apple. But if I were to invent a new type of smartphone and I wanted to brand it as an Apple smartphone, well, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? Because Apple has the exclusive right to use that particular word to indicate the source of their very specific goods and services. So let's talk about some common types of trademarks. These are the ones we often think of when we think about trademarks. We think about brand names and slogans and logos. All right, those are the three big things that we typically talk about. And you can see some examples of them from Coca-Cola down there at the bottom of your screen. Now, you've probably never seen them like that before. You've probably never seen Coca-Cola or It's the Real Thing in Times New Roman font. You've probably never seen those logos on the right-hand side in black and white. But the reason I'm showing these to you is because this is how Coca-Cola has registered those trademarks with us. And they've done this for a very specific reason. And you are welcome to do the exact same thing. Because if you apply to register your trademark with us, it is up to you which version of your trademark you apply to register. If you want protection for the wording alone, you could apply to register it as a standard character trademark. And that's exactly what you see in the bottom left side there with Coca-Cola and It's the Real Thing. And what that means is you're not asking for protection for what the trademark looks like. You're asking for protection for the wording alone, which is actually incredibly expansive because it means over the life of the trademark, you can use that word in whatever font style, size, or color you want to. You're not limited to it only appearing in a very particular way. Well, that's the case if you're wanting to register a brand name or a slogan. Well, what about a logo? Well, if you apply to register your logo in black and white, that means that you're saying, hey, USPTO, I'm not claiming any particular colors in my trademark. And we'll say, okay, that's fine. And that means that over the life of your trademark registration, you can use your trademark in whatever color you want to. You're not locked into it only appearing in a very particular set of colors. Now, I'm not allowed to give you legal advice. Okay, so what I'm saying right now is not legal advice. But I can tell you over all my years as a trademark examining attorney and now doing outreach for the office, most of the time what small business owners end up doing is one of two things. They apply to register it in standard character format, right? So in that Times New Roman font, even though you don't use it that way. Or if it's a logo or something like that, they apply to register in black and white because that gives them a broader scope of protection. But I don't want you to think trademarks are limited to brand names, slogans, and logos. Pretty much anything can be a trademark so long as it indicates source. It could be a sound like the NBC chimes, bum, bum, bum. It could be a color like pink. If you've ever seen the color pink in fiberglass insulation, that's a registered trademark. It's kind of represented by that lined brick down there in the bottom left-hand corner. It could be a hologram, like Upper Deck's hologram there. It's registered as a trademark for sports trading cards. Or it could be a three-dimensional configuration, like Coca-Cola's bottle, their contour bottle shape. You see that shape in the refrigerated section of your convenience store, you're like, boom, there's a Coca-Cola right over there. Or think about a Weber grill or a Volkswagen Beetle car. You automatically know who is the provider or the producer of that particular good or that particular service just by looking at it and seeing it. So very quickly before we move on, quick knowledge check, and you don't have to put this in the chat. I guess you can if you want to, but you don't have to. Does a federally registered trademark mean that you own a word or phrase? We know the answer to that, and that is no. I see one person already putting in a no. Thank you for that N. Okay, so it doesn't mean that you own it. It just means that you have the exclusive right to use it to indicate the specific source of your goods and services. Now, we haven't talked about this one, but do you have to use your business name as your trademark? And the answer to that is no, you do not. Just because you have a business name, that does not mean that you have a trademark. A business name just means you have the right to do business in your particular state or jurisdiction. That is completely separate from your brand name, your slogan, or your logo. Now, it could be the same, but it doesn't have to be. It all depends on how you use it. A prime example is Google. Their business name is Alphabet Inc. or something like that, but their trademarks are Google, Gmail, YouTube, right? So you could have a similar situation in your case with your new invention or whatever business you're starting. Have a really kind of boring thing for your business name and something super awesome as your trademark. All right, so I'm quickly going to move into benefits or federal registration because we have a lot to cover today. And I know I speak quickly, so if I'm talking too fast, pop something in the chat and say, Jason, I have a question because I couldn't understand you, okay? So trademark rights in the United States are made in different ways, but there are two main ways. One is through common law and the other is through federal registration. So common law trademark rights are the quickest and the easiest, and they're created as soon as you begin to use something as your trademark. That's it. There you go. You start using something as a trademark, you're already beginning to earn trademark rights. Now, these are typically based under state law, a statute, perhaps case law. But the problem with them is that they are limited to the geographic area in which you're operating. Well, they're certainly going to be limited by the state in which you're operating. Or if you're, just doing a small little business in your hometown and you're not online, you're not on the socials, you're just selling your thing in here, right? So in one small town, that means your rights are only going to be in that one specific place. And that's fine if that's what you want your business to be. But what if you want to expand your business and have protection across the United States and maybe beyond? Common law rights are not necessarily the best way to go about protecting yourself in that situation. You can always let people know that you have common law trademark rights in something by just putting a little TM after it or putting a little SM after it. TM stands for trademark, SM stands for service mark. There's no regulation that says how you have to use these things. You can put in whatever font you want to, whatever size you want to. You could put it to the left or to the right or the top, bottom, in the middle of the trademark. It's really up to you. But the one thing you can't do is use the R in the circle. That is reserved for trademarks that have registered with our office. So let's talk about registering with our office and what happens if you decide to do that. Because if you're an inventor, you have this brand new product, you're going to want to sell this thing, right? You're going to want to make some of your money back, right? You have this monopoly that's sort of been created by your patent. You want to take advantage of it. One way to do that is through your brand name. Okay, and so if you want to be selling this thing across state lines, then you might want to apply to register with our office. And your federal registration rights are created as soon as you register with us. It creates a legal presumption that you are the owner of the trademark and that you have the right to use it throughout the United States and its territories. Now, that's different than common law. In that case, you'd have to be like, well, Judge, let's see, I first started using it in 1978, but you're right. And so you've got to go through this thing to try and prove that you were the owner of the mark and that you have the right to use it. Not so with a federal registration. You can walk in with your certificate and say, hey, judge, check this out. I got a right here. This means that I have a presumption anyway that I have the right to use it throughout the United States. It's putting the public on constructive notice that you are the owner of the trademark. You can bring your legal action concerning the trademark in federal court, which is a great benefit if you discover that someone on the other side of the country is infringing on your trademark. So instead of going across the country to sue that guy, instead you can sue them in the federal courthouse nearest you and make the infringer come to you in order to defend. That's a pretty great benefit. Because you're probably going to be in the technology sphere, there's probably a good chance there could be counterfeit goods concerning your stuff that could enter the country. So the great thing about a federal trademark registration is you can record it with U.S. Customs and Border Protection. And the CBP agents can try and stop those infringing counterfeit goods from entering the country. You know, think electronics and software and, you know, clothing and apparel and things like that. So the CBP doesn't allow, it's not just trademarks that can be recorded with them. And perhaps you'll hear about that, about whether copyrights can also be recorded with Customs and Border Protection. We might hear about that in just a couple of minutes. So that's a really great benefit if you're worried about these counterfeit goods that could be infringing on yours. You can also use your trademark as application or registration as a basis for filing abroad. Now, Sandra mentioned that there is no worldwide patent. There also is no worldwide trademark. If you want protection in other countries, you gotta file in those countries. There is something called the Madrid Protocol, which is an agreement that we have with other countries around the world, which kind of streamlines the process a little bit for getting protection in other countries. I mean, you still got to pay fees, you still have to have applications, all that sort of stuff, but it tries to make it a little bit more efficient. And if you apply or register with us, you can take advantage of that protocol in order to extend your protection abroad. And the other great thing as I close out here today is that you no longer need to use that TM. You no longer need to use that SM. Instead, what you're going to use is the little r in the circle. And that lets people know that you have registered your trademark with us and you have nationwide protection for your mark. All right, so that's going to do it for me. Oh, no, it's not. Actually, I forgot I have a knowledge check in here. Real quick, are you required to register your trademark with the USPTO? Answer is no, you are not. You could go your entire business life and only rely on your common law trademark rights. But it makes things harder for you to defend your trademark, and it means you're missing out on pretty significant federal trademark nationwide benefits. And of course, we know the answer to this one. Does registering with the USPTO give you international protection? No, it does not. If you want country protection abroad, you have to file abroad, whether it's Canada, Mexico, Germany, as Sandra mentioned, or what other country it is that you happen to be trying to move into. All right, so that's going to do it for me at this point. So Jalen, I'm gonna turn it over to you to handle copyrights. I'm going to stop sharing right here and mute myself so people can hear you instead.
Thanks, Jason. And I want to make sure you can see my screen. So yeah, thank you. Like Jason said, my name is Jalen Johnson, and I'm an attorney advisor with the U.S. Copyright Office in our Office of Public Information and Education. And I'm going to talk to you all today about copyright. So you heard a little bit about patents and you heard a little bit about trademarks. And so what I'll discuss is copyright, sort of what that is, what does that mean, and how it's relevant to you and your small businesses. So copyright is a form of intellectual property, and it basically protects creative works, or what the statute says is that it protects original works of authorship that are fixed in any tangible medium of expression. So those are sort of the three words that we want to look at and think a little bit more about what that means. What's original, what's a work of authorship, and what does it mean to be fixed in a tangible medium of expression? So this is a list of what are considered to be works under the copyright law. The list looks sort of short. You've got literary works, musical works, dramatic works, pantomimes, choreographic works, pictorial, graphic, and sculptural works, motion pictures, and other audiovisual works and sound recordings. But it's actually quite broad and encompassing of many, many, many different types of works that we create throughout the day while we're doing our business, while we're engaging with other things all around us. So think about books that we're reading, maybe reports that we might be writing, songs that we might be listening to, or music that we may incorporate into a promotional video, the video itself. If you go to see plays, that might be a dramatic work, things that we watch on television and things like that. So it's very, very, very broad what the term works means. So lots of creative things that we encounter and create and deal with on a day-to-day basis are going to be considered works under the copyright law and would be protected. But it's also important to think about what's actually not a work and what's not protected by copyright. So you have things like ideas, procedures, processes, systems, methods of operation, concepts, principles, and discoveries. These things are actually not protected by copyright, but they often are the underlying material that will be explained or illustrated in those creative works that we talked about earlier. So you might have an idea for a new business, or you might have a procedure or a process that will enhance the efficiency of something. So that actual idea or that procedure, that process would not actually be protected by copyright. But if you were to, let's say, create a manual explaining that procedure, the manual could be protected. Or if you were to, let's say, create an instructional video that sort of explains or shows the idea, then the actual video, but the underlying idea, process, system itself would not actually be protected by copyright. Maybe other forms of intellectual property might provide some protection, but not actually copyright. And so the next thing we'll think about, we said that we have to have works, but the works also have to be original. And this is actually a pretty low bar, but it has two components. Original means that it has to be independently created and that it has to be sufficiently creative. So independently creative just means that it wasn't copied from another work. And then to be creative, it really just has to have a small amount. A term that we often use is a modicum. So a very small amount of creativity. It's really good to give examples of what's not sufficiently creative. And that would be things like simple geometric shapes and designs, common and familiar symbols, individual words by themselves, and slogans. Those things wouldn't be creative enough for copyright protection. And one of the reasons is because copyright is really to promote creativity. And so if you have it where you just have a simple shape that's, someone can copyright and own and nobody else can use it, well, that's really a building block in the tools that we use to build and create other larger and more creative works. So we want those tools to be free for everyone to use in order to create more and more and more works. And the other thing about creativity and originality is it's really a very objective consideration. So we're not considering things like, well, is this valuable? Will people like it? Is it something that is useful? Is it something that provides a benefit? Or was it difficult to build? Or did it take a lot of time and effort? That's not something that's considered for copyright protection. It really just depends on what the work looks like, how it sounds, what we can actually see and hear from the work. That's what we're looking at when we're thinking about whether a work is creative and original. So the other requirement I mentioned is that the work has to be fixed. So fixation is another low bar in copyright. And it really just means that the work has been written down or recorded in some way for a long enough period that we can read it and recapture it and reproduce it. The other important thing about fixation is that it's actually the point at which copyright protection begins. When you write your work down, when you record it, that is the moment that copyright protection begins. You may have heard of copyright registration with the US Copyright Office. That does provide additional benefits, but it's not actually required for copyright protection or to have the exclusive rights of the copyright owner that we'll discuss in a minute. And the other thing I'll say, just a side note on copyright registration, is that registration of your copyrighted work with the US Copyright Office is the only way to register your work. There have been myths of people saying, oh, you can put it in the mail and send it to yourself, and that's copyright registration or protection, but that's not actually true. To receive those benefits of registration, you do have to register with the Copyright Office. And some of the benefits will be actually similar to what Jason talked about on the trademark side, but benefits related to being able to provide or bring a lawsuit in federal court, providing notice, providing people with information about the actual copyright, that you are the author, that you are the owner. So those are some of the benefits that you get with registration that are additional, that will require registration with the Copyright Office. So now that we know a little bit about, what a copyrightable work is, how to get it, how do we secure copyright protection, it's important to know how long that protection lasts. So copyright protection lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. And if there's a work that's created by more than one individual, we call those joint works. That term would be based on the life of the last surviving author. There are also what are known as works made for hire, anonymous works, and pseudonymous works. Those are determined by a different term, and that's 95 years from the first publication of the work, or 120 years from the date that the work was created, whichever expires first. So who is a copyright owner? We talked about what a copyright is and how long a copyright lasts, but who actually owns a copyrighted work? So in most cases, the work's owner is going to be the work's author. Actually, I shouldn't say in most cases, in all cases. The initial work's owner is going to be the work's author. But who is the work's author? Well, in most cases, here's what I'll say: most cases, the work's author is going to be the actual person who created that work, who made that work, who fixed it, who had those creative ideas and then fixed them in a tangible form and made that expression. But there is a thing called work made for hire in the copyright law, where the actual creator is not the author or the owner. It's the person who hired the creator, whether that be their employer, or if they have a specially commissioned type of work, it could be that commissioning party. So in the case of a work made for hire, it's not the actual creator, but the creator's employer or the person who hired the creator through a commissioned agreement. And then you can also be a copyright owner if you received ownership in a transfer. But the transfer has to be in writing. So a verbal agreement or a verbal transfer, someone saying, I'm giving this to you, you are the copyright owner now, is insufficient. And then there are other operations, such as if someone has passed. Remember, it lasts after the author is gone. So it can be passed through inheritance and things like that. So I have a question here asking, are we all copyright owners? And the answer is yes. You can see it's pretty easy to create and fix a copyrightable work. And I'm sure many of us in our capacities have done that. You may be doing it now. You may be taking notes. You might have taken a selfie if you're not entertained by what I'm saying right now, but we're all likely copyright owners. So the rights of the copyright owner. So the rights of the copyright owner are the rights to reproduce or make copies of the work, prepare derivative works, which would be things like translations and adaptations, and the right to distribute the work to the public, display the work publicly, and perform the work publicly. So these are the things that the owner has the exclusive right to do, and others who want to engage in these activities would either need to get permission from the owner or be using one of the copyright law's exceptions and limitations. So speaking of exceptions and limitations and how do we use works if we're not the copyright owner, well, these are some of the ways that we can do that. The copyright law actually provides exceptions and limitations that allow others to use a work in specific situations if they are complying with all of the requirements of that. One big one that we hear about often is fair use. And so fair use is not an easy determination to make. It's not something we can say, oh, I think this is fair. Actually, factors in the law that are set out. We don't have a lot of time to get into that today, but we do want people to be aware that there are ways that you can use works without necessarily asking for permission, although of course permission is the safest way to use a work, and permission is a really good idea if you're thinking about using a work. The other thing I want to mention, even though it's not necessary for copyrightable works, we have the public domain. That's a great resource for works that are not protected by copyright. You don't have to worry about getting permission. You don't have to worry about relying on an exception or limitation, but these are works that are not protected. They are free to use. Anyone can use these works without asking the once copyright owner because they're not protected by copyright. And so that is a really quick, sort of quick and dirty high level overview. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. And I'm going to also share my email address there. You can email myself. And we also have a public information line that you can email. But now I'm going to turn it back to Zandra, I think, and she's going to talk about some of the resources that they have at the PTO.
Okay, hello. Sorry about that. So yeah, so quickly, just some of the resources we do have at the PTO for a lot of the, so in the office I work in the Office of Patent Stakeholder Experience, we work on a lot of with a lot of pro se applicants. So we do what we have a pro se assistance center there. So it's actually a pro se phone line along with programs and activities that we put on to assist an independent inventor. Now, I'm going to give you the Patent Office quick statement that says this: we always suggest that you use a licensed attorney or agent. However, we do have some programs in place to assist you in filing your application. Again, we have the Pro Se Assistance Programs. There's a phone number. It's actually on our website where you can call. You will be connected to a patents professional. You will be connected to a patents professional who will assist you. Again, we can't give you, as Jason said, we can't give you legal advice, but we are able to answer most of your questions. Now, this does go back, I'm sure Jason will tell you, their Trademarks also has an assistance center. I will let you know the actual filing of a patent application can be a little complicated, but we do have a lot of programs to assist. We also have well, we don't provide the pro bono services. So if someone wants to file and they're in need of an attorney, but we do have programs and we do work with attorneys who will provide pro bono services for an inventor. So we do have that. We do have some additional resources where we have, we have a whole bunch of call centers to assist and answer questions with the filing. There we go. There, as you see, there are our free services. And through patents. Also, we provide educational opportunities for independent inventors or just inventors in general. We provide educational opportunities. Some of the opportunities are, we have, these are all the call centers that you're seeing here. The call centers, the ombudsman programs, the process assistant program, you're seeing all the call centers. But we have educational opportunities. A lot of them are virtual under our virtual instructor-led programs that are free. Again, they're virtual programs for those people who need CLE. We actually provide that for those. We have a START program, which is basically a 3-day program to teach independent inventors how to file an application. We have a STEP program, which is for either attorneys or for independent inventors. And it's basically 4 days in the life of a patent examiner and which will teach our stakeholders exactly the way patent examiners are taught. There's going to be a patents boot camp. Jason has a couple other services in trademarks because there's a trademark boot camp that I'm sure he has more information about. And additionally, in August, annually we have a program called Invention Con. It's this year, it's August 12th through 15th. I believe those are the dates. And Invention Con is a free program that basically will discuss, well, there it is. Oh, it's the 10th through the 12th. So Invention Con is a program that, again, we do it annually. You register for this event. We have speakers, we have breakout sessions, we have patent professionals who can be there to answer any of your independent questions that you have. I think that's it. But if you do need additional information, again, all this information is right here. It is on our website at uspto.gov. And if you need some more information about some of the trademark services, I'll let Jason have a couple seconds to talk about those.
All right, thanks, Andrea. Sure, I'll take a couple seconds to talk about some trademark resources. If you're able to see the screen at all, I'm sharing the screen here. I can kind of show you where to find a couple of things that you might find interesting. If you want to learn more about trademarks, one thing that I would recommend is to sign up and attend our Trademark Basics Bootcamp. This is a free 8-week course. And it's on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're 3 weeks into it already, so we have 5 more to go. And essentially what it is it takes you through the fundamentals of trademarks and also through the steps in the registration process. So you can learn very specific things about searching or learn about filing, things of that sort. And I walk you through, I did this week, I walked everybody through tests in order to show people searching mechanics. In 2 weeks, I'm going to watch people through the T's plus initial application form. So we have lots of information that we're trying to get out to you so you can try and do these things on your own as much as possible. Now, we often recommend you do work with an experienced trademark attorney, but hey, look, sometimes I think like up to 25% or so of our filers are are not represented by attorneys and they do things on their own. You're perfectly able to do that. We just ask that you make sure that you've educated yourself as much as possible about the process and the things that are involved in it, because it seems pretty simple, but can actually be pretty complex. And you want to be careful that you're not stepping into any little pitfalls that might come along. So we have lots of resources available on the site. The one thing I'll say as I turn it back over to the Copyright Office is be sure to check out the Trademark Basics page. If you want to learn more about trademarks and you're like, you know what, I don't want to attend a boot camp, Jason, that's fine. Go to Trademark Basics, go to the page, and we have lots of information that's here. It's all in written form, especially if you like to read as opposed to listen to somebody else, yap on and on about trademarks. And you can find a lot of the information there that you might need. So plenty of things to explore all throughout the uspto.gov website. So I'll turn it over to the Copyright Office. Miriam, I think you were going to talk resources.
Yep, I'm just going to, thanks, Jason. I'm going to give an overview of what we do and also just give, can you hear me? I got an error, so I want to make sure you're great. Okay, I'm going to talk about what we do and also talk about, thank you, my resources. Okay, all right, thanks, Jalen. All right, go ahead. So my colleague Jalen talked you through a little bit of the background around copyright law, a little around registration. Next slide, please. And my name is Miriam Deshant. I'm the Associate Registrar for Public Information and Education at the Copyright Office. I'm going to tell you what we do, where we're at, and some of our initiatives that are geared towards making sure we're reaching into underserved communities and ensuring that the participation is broadened of the copyright and the IP system. So actually, the Copyright Office is in the legislative branch of the government within the Library of Congress. If you look at that picture, my office is probably right in the middle of it, and I'm waving right now out my small window. So if you see it, that's where we're at. We're the main U.S. agency charged with administrating the Copyright Act, which is the act that covers how copyright works in the United States. Next slide. So we have lots of things we do here, and our new strategic plan really focuses in on about 4 pillars. The first is the one I'm going to talk about here, and it's the one that I'm primarily charged with directing, which is copyright for all, which is to make the copyright system, the laws, participation in it, as understandable and accessible to as many members of the public as possible. And what this means is, building on Jalen's comment earlier, and Sandra's and Jason's as well, is this system of intellectual property really drives creativity and innovation. And participating in that first requires being aware of it, and then it requires taking some actions to protect yourself. And it also means being a responsible user of copyright. So like Jalen was saying, pretty much everyone is a creator, whether it's in their professional or personal lives. And both using other people's work and your own work and protecting that work is an important goal of ours to share. Other parts of work that the U.S. Copyright Office gets involved in is advising Congress, the courts, and other agencies impartially on copyright law and policy, advising developments in the copyright law, as well as continuing to update and modernize the way that we work so we can deliver the best services. We're especially interested in information and data. We have a chief economist that issues, who's issuing studies around, for example, women in copyright. Next slide. Thanks. So we're a small agency, but we handle 500,000 claims a year, hundreds of thousands of public inquiries, and manage funds, actually licensing funds of over $1 billion a year. And, we do policy studies and other things. So here's just some quotes about what we do here. We're the sort of engine on the creativity side, next to the innovation and business side, as our partnerships with the copyright, between the copyright and the Patent and Trademark Office demonstrate. Let's just move forward, Jalen, and I'll get into a couple resources now. So like I said, we have a goal to make things as understandable as possible, including people who aren't currently in the system. And what I mean by that is they're authors, they're creating things all day long, every day, but they may not be filing anything. And so we don't know how to, we're not in touch with them. So that might be you. So if that is you, please know that on our website, it's part of our job, and we have for you circulars, which are sort of, briefings, worksheets about the law, different areas where you can learn specifics. FAQs, we have a great video series called Learning Engine that really takes you through a very approachable, entertaining path about copyright. Of course, we answer questions from the public. You can call our office, send us an email. Educational programs like this one, we're always honored to work with the SBA, especially for this audience, and all kinds of other presentations to expand participation. Next. I mentioned a recent study that we put out that I just encourage you to look at, just because it's interesting and it sits next to some of the USPTO studies around ensuring that not only does everyone know about the copyright and the patent and trademark systems, but also participates actively in them. That means getting your name on the title, just like you want your title on a car or a house, you want your name on the patent registration, the patent application, you want it on the trademark registration, you want it on the copyright registration application, because that means that it's yours and it's in your name. So we conducted some studies, and the studies basically show that women are underrepresented, although maybe not to the same degree as on the patent side. So there's some interesting findings in there, and we have a concerted effort, next slide, please, to broaden our diversity, equity, inclusion outreach, just like I know that USPTO is as well. I think I touched on this, so in the interest of time and getting to questions, I'll just go to the next slide, please, Jalen. Thanks. I just want to mention really quick some late breaking news, which is also part of our Copyright for All impact, which is we now have a copyright small claims court in the United States. Like all areas of intellectual property, copyright is something that the owner needs to enforce, but there are resources to do that that are usually in the justice system. And there's a new Copyright Small Claims Court that sits actually within the Library of Congress and within the Copyright Office under our General Counsel. It's a copyright claims board. You bring smaller claims there. Has relatively minimal filing fees, relatively easy to use. It's intended for people who are representing themselves or working with attorneys who are helping them through the process, much like some of our other accessible initiatives. So if you want to learn more about that, contact us and let us know. You do have to have registered your work before you file, although you can do that in parallel. Next. Just wrapping up, and I'll send it back to you, Sandra, if you have some more to add. If you happen to be in the capital area and you'd like to come on down to Capitol Hill, which is where we're located, we do have an exhibit right now called Find Yourself in Copyright, which takes you through sort of the history of the development of copyright and puts together some well-known items from the arts and pop culture the history. So for example, you can learn about the Statue of Liberty and copyright, or Kermit the Frog, or the Maltese Falcon, or various speeches and books that have been published, movies, derivative works. It's very engaging. So if you're in the area, please feel free to stop on by. You can find out more information on our website. But thanks for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit today. And here's how you can connect with us on social media. Before I go, I just want to say, having recently worked at the Patent and Trademark Office, the Policy and International Affairs Division there actually does have a copyright team. So the link that was shared is accurate for the way in which the Patent and Trademark Office advises the executive branch through the Department of Commerce on copyright policy as it intersects with administration priorities. So it's an area of very fascinating law for those of us who are lawyers and interested in that sort of thing. But if you're interested in knowing a little bit about how your application process works, or you have a question or a concern, you'll reach out to the Copyright Office and we'd be happy to help you out. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Let me make sure we've got everybody here on the and Sandra. So we have time. We've got about 10 minutes, so we can answer a few questions from the audience, and as well as, you know, I think I kind of wrap up a couple of the questions related to, you know, where you think there might be crossover, right? Can something be both a trademark and be copyrighted? Like maybe I think the specific question maybe was around the NBC melody, right? And then kind of for that matter, how do the innovators here, you know, what could they be asking themselves to figure out, like, do they need to protect on all these fronts? And so I'm gonna throw that out there. And does anybody want to be the first to answer?
I can chime in.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah, sure, yes. There can absolutely be crossover in some of the types of works that you create, depending on whether it's protected by copyright and trademark or other areas of law. It would really just depend on the specific requirements for each type of protection. So let's take a logo, for example. If the logo has a sufficient amount of creativity, we talked about creativity being a requirement earlier, you know, if it's more than just a simple circle or something like that, if it has that creativity and it meets those requirements for copyright protection, then of course it can be protected by copyright. And if it has those requirements that Jason talked about in terms of being a source identifier and used in commerce, et cetera, then of course you can also have a trademark. You would get different types of protection that align with each area of law, but there can be crossover in the protection. Was there another part to that question?
No, I mean, well, I think partly it's the helping somebody who's new kind of navigate whether they should be researching further, right? How do they know if they should be looking more at around protecting through copyright or trademark or patent? And then I think there have been some questions around trade secret and, like, is there an actual legal pathway, you know, similar to trademark, right? You don't have to register the trademark, you've got protection, but then there is a legal path for registration. So what about trade secret?
Trade secret is a little different. Yeah, you know what? Miriam probably knows a lot more about this too. But so with the trade secret, the Defend Trade Secret Act of 2016, right? So they kind of put it more into the federal courts area, because originally before that, it was kind of a civil action that the owner of the trade secret would have to go through.
And do non-disclosure agreements actually protect trade secret or patents? And is this you can't provide legal advice?
Protect is a hard word, right? So do they protect? I mean, that's a legal action. Again, the patent office, that's not what we do. You know, we will determine whether or not something is patentable.
I can jump in, Sandra, if you want here. So my background is in intellectual property law, just across the board, and helping members of the public understand sort of how they fit. So first of all, unlike the other types of intellectual property, a trade secret is something that you never tell the government about, because you'd be sharing a secret. And so it is only a trade secret if it is commercially important to you. It's a business asset. If it's not just, like, you know, your cousin's phone number or something. You take reasonable measures to protect it. You keep it behind closed doors or in a safe, or restrict employee access to it, or separate different parts of it so nobody except you and maybe one other person understands how to make Kentucky Fried Chicken or something, as a famous example. And then also, besides reasonable measures, you do have to think, besides access, about what happens after people leave an organization. So an NDA or some kind of agreement that you have with the people who have access to it, it is a reasonable measure in protection of the trade secret, but it's an ongoing obligation. It's different than just having a piece of paper that the government gives you that says, congratulations, this is your title to this now. Not that other areas of IP like trademarks and patents don't have ongoing obligations as well. So I hope that answers the question, but the most important takeaway about trade secrets is that they're appropriate for some things, especially some things that are not protectable by other areas. But they are the one area where the government's role is less to help you secure the right and more to help you learn about it and then enforce it, like Sandra was saying, through the justice system.
So the one thing I would add here, especially for folks who are concerned about all of these issues, as well you should be, right? You do want to be thinking about all of these different types of intellectual property. We're not here to say to recommend specific attorneys or anything like that, but I do want to highlight the value of working with an experienced intellectual property attorney, because that attorney is going to be able to help you differentiate between this is a patent issue, this is a copyright issue, this is a trademark issue, what have you, and be able to think about what's the best way that I can help you as my client in order to protect these different things, especially as you've invented this thing and you're going to try and bring it to market. What are the things you want to be thinking about who you're talking to and in which countries, right? So there's a lot of value in working with an attorney who can help you. And I know trying to hire an attorney to help you can be a pretty daunting thing, and it can be pretty expensive as well. I can only speak to the USPTO side of things, so I'll leave Miriam and Jaylin to talk about any potential copyright lawyers that might be out there or resources that might be out there. But we have our law school clinic program at the USPTO, where we've partnered with law schools around the country. We have over 60 of them that we've partnered with. These law schools have clinics. So if you apply to the clinic and are accepted into the clinic, you're going to be working with an experienced IP attorney and also going to be working with law students who are kind of learning as you go. And all of those services are provided for free. You're still going to have to pay fees and things like that, but you can get the value of working with an experienced intellectual property attorney for free.
Yeah, and I know Sandra had mentioned where to find the pro se assistance and pro bono programs. And so there are a lot of inventor entrepreneur resources on the PTO website. And Miriam had also shared with us a number of resources on the Copyright Office. And so as we wrap up here, I like to think about the common misconceptions or like mistakes that you see frequently, although if there's a way to phrase it in advice as opposed to planting a myth, I would love to hear it. So somebody from the Copyright Office want to share kind of what advice would you give to somebody in thinking about copyright, and then we'll go patent and trademark.
That's hard to just pick one, but one thing I'll say, and just because of the nature of the environment that we're living in, the digital world, and like lots of access to things, I just want people to remember that, a lot of times the things that we're accessing, because we can get our hands on it, download it, right click, share, whatever, there's usually still a copyright in that work. And so that's something that you might want to think about while you're using and engaging with works, especially on the internet.
Thank you. Sandra, do you have any kind of key pieces of advice you'd give to somebody who looking to protect using patents?
No, have a business plan. Have a plan, because it's an expensive and it's a complicated process. Know what you're doing before you file it. Just have a plan, and if this is something you believe or you want to be commercially viable, protect it. And if it's patentable, do the patent process. If it's, service mark or trademark, do that. Protect. Go through the processes, protect.
Jason, any final words of advice around trademarks?
Sure. So in addition to the misconceptions we kind of talked about earlier, the one thing that I would say is that sometimes people get confused about is about when they can apply to register a trademark. And one thing I would say is start early, okay? Even as you're just beginning to invent the thing, start thinking about what your branding is going to be, what you want to use for a brand name or a slogan or logo or whatever it is. Start that process early on. Because even before you start to use something as a trademark, you are allowed to apply for federal registration. Now, notice I said apply, all right? You can't register it yet because you have to be using your trademark across state lines in order to actually register here in the United States. But you can submit an application, get your application in the door. Just be aware you have to have a bona fide intent to use that trademark within the next 3 to 4 years when you're filing. So it can't be just like, oh, you're like, here's a good idea. Maybe this one, maybe this one. No. It's got to be like legit bona fide intent. We're like, this is the thing that I'm going to be using as my brand name, my slogan, my logo. Do your research, start early on that process. Don't be the person who 20 years in is like, oh, maybe I should protect my trademark. And guess what? It's too late because there's somebody else already out there using the same or similar trademark for related goods and services.
Yeah. And Miriam, I'm going to let you have a final word of advice, although I know that you already heard about Jalen. So
I'll be quick. I just wanted to say all of these areas of law, although we usually talk about them separately, for you as a business or an inventor or an innovator, they all fit together into your innovative creation or expression or invention. I mean, they're all packaged up in there. And so really think of it holistically. Talk to somebody who can really get into it and assess what it is you have and how you do protect that, whether that is through an IP protection or it's through, enhanced marketing to really get it in the marketplace and compete. But think about it early and often, like Jason said. I think that's the number one.
well, thank you so much to all of you, Zandra, Jason, Jalen, and Miriam. Really appreciate all the expertise and advice that you provided. And I think the last thing I would want to leave everybody here with, besides, come join us tomorrow when we go celebrate our 40th birthday for the Small Business Innovation Research Program. And we'll be announcing 40 small business winners of the Tibbetts Awards tomorrow, as well as 5 organizations that help entrepreneurs. I want to leave you with, hey, there are a lot of resources and we know it's very complex. So just know that they exist. There are a lot of very free resources coming from the federal government. And please reach out to your local entrepreneur support organizations. They can, as Miriam said, help talk to you, connect with you on in specific questions that you have. And so help you navigate through funding and protecting your IP and where can you find the expertise and facilities and maybe other IP you want to bring in to create something more. So all of this is very complex and we really support and want you to get your innovations out into the world. So thank you to our panelists and thank you all for joining us today. Bye.
Record.